Hello, hello, you most beautiful stars. I see Lori in the chat. Good to see you, my dear. Everyone's getting situated. Something is being dropped off to my house very soon. They tried to get here earlier, so if dog starts barking, we'll get him settled down again. Hello, hello, happy March 13th, 2024. I'm going to take my cough drop out, of course. And March 13th. Love it. Did y'all know that it was L. Ron Hubbard's birthday today? This is when they think like, I don't know, the return is going to happen on his birthday, those Scientologists. Gotta love them. Gotta love them. Um, you guys don't know this, and this is Edgar Cayce Life Skill Studies, but I was just thinking about it. Y'all don't know. My mom in high school tried to convince me one night to go to their college in Florida. Their college. My whole life, it was always a matter of what to do with Courtney. Courtney doesn't know how to follow rules and order and be a productive member of society. So it was always what to do with Courtney, right? So I will tell you, the Scientology my mom did do prior to me being born. She took a couple of those, or maybe right after I was born, somewhere in there. She went to a couple of their Scientology classes, whatever, and there were always these books in the house. Like we had like two copies or one copy of like one of their like first books. And I will tell you, as a child going through it, it was amazing. They had some fascinating pictures and thoughts and ideas of things. So they were always that. I remember at least one hard copy, big, thick book from Scientology in the house. Yeah, we had a lot of different material. And so later in high school, when it was looking like I wasn't going to graduate high school, she one night she was like, you know, you don't necessarily have to graduate high school to go to their college, and it's a free college in Florida. This poor woman didn't know that it was a cult at the time, you know. It was not out yet fully of how much what Scientology is. So I always remember that fondly when it is L. Ron Hubbard's birthday. I will also tell you this was the day in 2020 where basically the whole world shut down. You know, it took the states a while to shut down, and it was like today's the day. And I will tell you, in the South, we did that for about 4 or 5 days, and then went, yeah, we're not going to do this. Let's open everything back up, because the South is very rebel punk, which is awesome. Um, so for everybody to remember, yep, today was the day in 2020 where it was everybody. Everybody was connected in that way, in that experience, as we experience history together. And I remember all this because today is actually my Brad and I's anniversary, March 13th. And a lot of people don't put that stuff out there, but it's not like everything's known anyways, right? There are no secrets. So today is our anniversary. And so thank you all for saying happy anniversary. So it's L. Ron Hubbard's birthday. It's the day the world shut down. it's it's a great day. It's a great day. 313. Definitely a great day for all interesting things. Um, I see Lori came in the chat. Happy to see you, Seeker of Truth. I see Lucky Stone AA8 walked in. Good to see you, sir. Lucky and I are going to have a great conversation that will air Friday night at 8 p.m. Remember, everybody, please share, subscribe, and enjoy these videos. Thumbs up. As to once I can get to, I think, 500, I'm not that far away. Lucky and I would be able to go live on Friday nights. So please which is much more enjoyable often, right? For those in the chat as we are live now. Also, I know I put out there, I even did a pre-video with recapping hermetic aspects to get into order. I don't know why I put that out. Well, I put that out there because I was told to do it. I've been told to discuss order with the peoples for months and months from the Akashic and guides, angels, whomever I speak with, right? Especially Gabriel. He wants me to explain order to people. Um, but having compassion to myself, um, I don't think I should. I don't think I'm capable of diving that deep right now because of my schedule. So, what I have determined, having compassion for myself, is that Fridays at 11, when I can, live at 11, I will be doing short stories or books that I am involved in the moment. Like right now, I am reading The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, or by Manly P. Hall. Great material. For some reason, many people think that Manly P. Hall was a Freemason. He wasn't. He was, um, they made him an honorary Freemason way later in life. He, by choice, is not a Freemason. What it is took, they gave Manly P. Hall all of their readings, all their writings, all of their stuff, like all of their stuff that translations and understanding got lost over time. And he broke it down for them. Like he worked for these people, like he broke it all down, like, oh, you guys believe in stuff, but you don't even remember what it means. So he broke it down for them, and they were so appreciative as to how it changed the scope, that much later in life, he did accept an honorary invitation to quote unquote be a Freemason. He was not a Freemason the majority of his life. That's people like Manly P. Hall don't go for organizations like that, right? So I just want to make that clear. So I might dive a little bit into this. I would not be able to read it word for you though, because of copyright laws. But I might start doing that on Fridays. And speaking of Edgar Cayce, because this is Edgar Cayce Life Skills. Beautiful ladies and gentlemen, lovely stars, beings of light, however you feel today. We are in, the secrets of the universe and how to use them. I do have to be truthful and frank. This book is starting to drive me a bit nuts. Um, I read the last chapter, or I read the chapter that we're in today. I can barely use any of it. The writer, I don't mean to speak poorly about this woman because she is probably passed. Um, she's probably not with us anymore. The entire chapter is her talking about herself that we would be in today. Brushing on fear. I think she didn't even quote Edgar. She didn't even quote Edgar. She said something related to Edgar, which I will bring up, but that's it. She was describing her own fears, um, the majority of the time, and or the concept of our animalistic ways and what can bring fear in. So, what I'm going to do today, because we are technically still in this book, which I don't think we're going to be much longer. I just can't keep doing it. It's not a resource. It's just not a resource, and it has nothing to do with Edgar. It has to do with the person who wrote it writes complete chapters without any comprehension as to what the topic is being discussed. Today, the topic is fear. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my lovely Edgar Cayce companion. right? This beautiful, thick, lovely book. We're going to pull stuff from this to talk about fear because it would technically be the topic from the chapter that we're in. But we don't need to talk about somebody else's fears, right? Um, why I bring that up is A, because it's going to be a little bit of a different format today of me going through things, but also because this book is kind of like I said, it's not conducive to what we're trying to do. Let's pick another one. Let's pick another one. I am going to randomly on my collection, I picked 4. I will put a poll on the community page. So everyone who's listening, it's not up there yet. I'm presenting it to you now. There will be a poll. Vote. Vote to where we're going. I will tell you, I read a bit of this one. This will be one of them. Edgar Cayce on the Millennium. On the Millennium, which is where we are, right? The Millennium turned over there in Y2K. We all were there. We all experienced it in some way or another. Many of you might have been babies. Many of you were in your 20s like me. Some of you are older, right? So that's going to be a choice. Edgar Cayce on channeling your higher self, because that seems to be a hot topic. Edgar Cayce on channeling your higher self. That'll be one that you can vote from. Edgar Cayce handbook for creating your future. We like creating our future. You're writing your story right now, as the Akashic tells us so, right? Creating your future. And or Edgar Cayce on reincarnation. Reincarnation, right? So those are going to be the 4 that I will put in a poll, so y'all can go and vote to where we're going to next. Doesn't mean much to me where we go. It's up to you guys. This is all for you, right? So I hope everybody is doing good. Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. It's a great year. Thank you for saying happy anniversary. Yeah, it's a good day to be married. For those of you that the one thing that Brad and I do that I guess other couples don't do, but it does help. Every year, consciously or even maybe unconsciously, we in some way, shape, or form ask each other sincerely if we would still choose one another because it's a choice. And supposedly we just keep saying yes. Cool. Yeah, I'll ride out another year with you. Cool. Groovy. It's not that difficult. Unless it is. Unless you don't want to choose that. The card today. Number 16, conception. The frequency of conception invites us to bring our consciousness to our origin, a place where everything in creation begins. It helps us to remember the infinite potential and possibilities of this space, and that we can manifest through our own focused awareness and intention. Interesting they had us pull that. That is the card for today. I hope the camera can focus. Focuses a little bit better out this way. Lots of bubbles there. My old camera would focus better. Lots of bubbles there. I will try to remember to attach this to a short so you can see it better. Conception. Interesting, because we're going to be talking about fear. Fear, fear, fear. I've said it on this program, and I've said it a million times. I've said it a million times that I don't conceive fear the same as other people, and that is not to be in comparison or to elevate myself in any way. I just don't see fear in the same way. Um, uh, but we are living definitely in a time where fear is paramount. Fear is, you know, seems to override many things. And what's fascinating to me, and I've been kind of thinking about this because I do read all the ancient texts, and history and I are very connected. The complexities of history, right, and the truth and lies and facts, and it doesn't matter. And this is why stories are so important, because every story, every life, every because you're an energetic story, right? You're an energetic story to me. To me, we think right now, as us beloved humans, we think right now that society is crumbling and society is so bad and society has all these issues, and um, society is not, it's nowhere near, in my humble opinion, nowhere near what has been throughout history. And I think people's fears are returning to times that far worse than what we live in now. Far, far worse. I mean, we cannot understand the scope as to um, when Buddha, the original Buddha, walked the land and saw the suffering. We can't comprehend the scope of when Christ lived. I mean, it has not been bad in the Middle East the way it was when Christ was walking. It's still to this day is nowhere near what it was. So it's hard for us humans to put that construct into our minds. And I think a lot of the fear is based on, oh my goodness, what if we go back to that? Opposed to moving forward with the positive society structures that we do have. And what I mean by that is the communication that we have. And knowing that we're nowhere near how bad it could be. I mean, think about, the Ottoman Empire, and think about all of it. Think about when the Crusades, and think about all of it. I mean, this we are all intelligent stars that we know. We're nowhere near that stuff, but yet we live in such great fear. That's why, and that is just my logic and reason, not understanding the fear that humans have. That's just part of my logic and reason. So, to get into this material, like I said, so we're at chapter 9, and it's called Secrets of Inner Fires and Fears, which you would think, being here at Stars of Morning Light, that inner fire she would be describing, well, the God spark, the fire, right? The fire, um, even Zoroastrianism, the fire, right? But no, she gave an example as to when she was afraid of something, and how she thought the Holy Spirit was very angry and filled her with fire. It was a very interesting story that I don't think even as an adult she understood well. Um, so again, she's the majority of this chapter is she's talking about herself, which is fine and well if you're reading it and you can resonate, but this is 1989 when she wrote it. Um, different time, right? Different time period. So I'm going to read a little bit of snippets and we're going to go into fear. So I'm actually on page 84. It's kind of mid through the chapter. The chapter's short as well. Fear itself can be viewed as a monstrous thought form, a vampire draining the life from us for its own sake. We built it, create it, and nourish it until it grows so large it becomes the spirit which directs how our lives will go. Once we give Once we give it life, fear entangles itself into our flesh and distorts our vision. It grows a voice louder than our own until we begin to think it is our own. The voice of the spirit of the fear speaks through our mouths in subtle little ways that we don't even hear. We say, I'm afraid of what will happen if I do this or that. And gee, I'm afraid I really don't know. Or I'm afraid you'll have to ask Mr. So and so. We've accepted the language of fear as though it were meaningless. Mm, food for thought, isn't that, folks? We've accepted the language of fear as if it were meaningless. And she starts that little paragraph saying, for all of you intelligent beings, fear itself can be viewed as a monstrous thought form that basically takes over and directs your life to the point that then we use it in common speech and it becomes apparently meaningless. Hmm. Hmm. We use words such as God in the same way we use words such as afraid. God, if I only could finish this project. Or good Lord, why in the world would you ask that? It appeals to the deity becoming meaningless, or lives become increasingly empty, and we seek other mirrors out there to reflect our existence. So she starts to say, we do the same thing with God. God becomes this abstract thought form that we then use in meaningless ways, based out of really the fear. Because it's the fear that's dictating more so because of the 3D existence, more animal lives that we live. And so we're replacing pretty big stuff with common language that decreases how we view it in our lives. Doesn't so much decrease its power, that's a definite, decreases how we view it. I'm going to skip a bit because then she goes into, and remember this was written in 1989. She goes into the increase of like horror movies and dramas and whatnot, based more on the human desire to kind of understand fear and experience fear in a different form, so we feel like we're releasing it in some way or we're controlling it. And do understand, I mean, there were black and white horror, there was this, there was that, but by the late 70s, some very fascinating horror movies were being made, right? um Fascinating horror movies that would instill fear into people, right, in various forms. We got Chainsaw Massacre, we got Last House on the Left, we got The Exorcist, right? All of these were introducing to audiences fears to try to override, right, the fear that we all fear we have inside. So she went on and on about that because it was 1989, and then by 89, I mean, you're all into the teeny bopper fear stuff that we all grew up with, Freddy Krueger and whatnot. We fear not only others, but ourselves because we were created by a God we don't understand. We've witnessed the powers of nature and believe that these are the forces of the raging, vengeful God. We've seen disease rage on the bodies of loved ones and have railed against a learned vision of God who could heal them, and he would. So why doesn't he? So then she goes into all the questions that we have. The reason we have all this deep fear is because we have no complete understanding of God or even remotely an understanding of God. We're just kind of walking around with a bunch of questions, which, I think in everyone's life at some point, especially when you're young, um, let's say late teens, early 20s, when you're grasping the scope of your identity and you're learning all these fascinating things, um, that question comes up many times. Well, if God could save the world or if God could heal everybody, why this? Why the suffering? Why the disease? Why the It's that questioning time period, which can continue on into late adulthood. Um, but that is also what establishes the fear more than the trust in God more, right? I'm just going through this chapter a bit because we are going to get into the Edgar Cayce companion and we're going to go into fear. Uh, I pause for a moment because someone in the chat, Miss Lovely Shelley, says she missed the card. What was the card? It was number 16, conception. The frequency of conception invites us to bring our consciousness to our origin, the place where everything in creation begins. It helps us to remember infinite potential and possibilities of this space and what we can manifest through our own focused awareness and intention. The reason I read that again is because this card, my deck knows what it's doing. This is going to be apropos when we get into the Edgar Cayce companion. So I read the definition again. Moving forth with the secrets of the universe. The physical level of mind, consciousness while awake, is in some ways more of a mystery than the mental and spiritual levels. The physical mind seems to sit on the stem like a flower head, showing its face in the morning, but closing its many petals at night. Like a flower, the physical mind develops through and is so easily influenced by environment. Some flowers, the minds, do best in the greenhouse. Some thrive wild and free in the field. And like a flower, the color and texture of the physical mind depends on being fed both from above and below. The physical mind exists between earth and sky, cut off from its source of nutrients before its time. It withers and dies. The bedeviling truth is, of course, that like a flower, the physical mind is doomed to die anyway. Eventually, regardless of the tender, loving care it receives. That's what makes it different from the soul mind, which doesn't die unless it chooses to. Cayce said, selfishness is the basic sin, and the soul that sins shall die. We're going to go into selfishness in the companion book because it's for Cayce. He explained to people that selfishness is actually what creates the fear. So she's bringing up the concept of death, which is by society, humanities, um, you know, thought processes and behaviors throughout time and space, that has been the majority of fear, right? I mean, I don't think people are going to argue this, that most people fear death more than some other stuff. And there's things that are, that can be all, and death can be broken up into little categories, right? Disease, survival, all sorts of things that are related to death. So really the capstone to it is the fear of death. We're going to be talking about this. Let me continue. It has been our human nature to fear death, but a worse fear, more difficult to overcome, is to fear life. Lewis Thomas says this because we are, perhaps uniquely among the Earth's creatures, the worrying animal. We worry away our lives, fearing the future, disconnect with the present, unable to take in the idea of dying, unable to sit still, sorry. It is difficult to comprehend without some element of fear creeping in that the physical mind and body is where death takes place, even though death begins the day we are born. We'd rather not believe the clock ticks on in a race against death which cannot be won. We we why don't we know that the act like it? Why don't we know that and act like it? Sorry. Why do we think of ourselves as gods? To postpone life until next time, when there is no guarantee of a next time, is death by burial alive. That is an interesting way to put that. It is death by burial alive. We can choose not to live, but we can't choose not to die physically. The error is in believing we don't have to live because we are not going to die. What is she trying to say there? Is that in the spiritual communities, um, and it's still very popular thoughts today, that because we're going to reincarnate our soul mind, our advanced consciousness that reincarnates over and over again, that we do, it's okay if we do somewhat the bare minimal in this life. Because we take away, once we start talking about reincarnation, we've taken away this construct of heaven and hell. So if we're not pinning ourselves against heaven and hell, and we know, "Oh, yeah, I'll probably come back," then how well do we actually live life in today? It is a paradigm that a lot of spiritual people fall into. That we tend to then take this life for granted because why? Well, we'll probably do it better next time. And or we try to learn and go through as many quote unquote lessons, which Edgar would refer to that as you don't learn lessons, you earn lessons. There's a difference there. Edgar would say that over and over again. You don't learn lessons, you earn lessons. Big difference. Or in the spiritual community, we take that kind of mindset of, okay, I hope I've learned, which I just said, Edgar would say earned. I hope I've gone through enough that I'm good. I don't have to come back. I don't have to come back. As if we're disappointed with our world of now, in our life of now, as if we're disappointed with this earth school. So we're hoping desperately that we don't have to come back. Do you think that's going to achieve what you want? Do you think that mindset's going to achieve it? Being disappointed with this place? I'm just posing thoughts that are very prominent in the spiritual communities. Either or doesn't get to the goal that you would like to achieve. It's all lackadaisical and unappreciative, which is definitely not why we're here. So she goes into that. And a lot of it is because we're still confused about death, and death is scary of this physical body of form, right? For many, it's what seeps in. It's that monstrous thought form that then creeps into everything we do because of this ticking clock of this inevitable, you're going to get old, this inevitable, you're going to die. Well, you can't fight the inevitable if that is the one thing that is inevitable, opposed to everything else that is just potentialities. So don't fight it. Acceptance. And that's why there's that line. I'm going to read it again from Lewis Thomas. We are perhaps uniquely among the earth's creatures a worrying animal. Oh, we worry away our lives, fearing the future, disconnect with the present, unable to take in the idea of dying, unable to sit still. And that is still very true for many humans. We worry away our lives, fearing the future. We are disconnected to the present, unable to take in the idea of dying. When we know it will happen. So this is logic, but there's so much about fear that is feeling. I'm going to bring you to what she did basically say about Cayce. Cayce repeatedly mentioned Cayce repeatedly mentioned Deuteronomy 30, verses 15 through 20, which translates into today is set before thee, life and good, and death and evil. Therefore choose life and good. She then goes on to say that, like, the 12-step communities really understood this whole today aspect. Just for today. Just for today. So I know I've mentioned this in the past, but this was probably last summer or summer before. I think in some of my more heartfelt videos that it was exactly Deuteronomy 30. It's still to this day my favorite part of the entire Torah, the Old Testament, as the Christians call it, the Torah. A lot of people don't read Deuteronomy. I loved it. It's great. But I also really love First Kings, which most people don't read. I read not in prejudice. I read to just gain whatever knowledge that I would like to have and what I toss out because I'm sovereign, so it's my decision. So Deuteronomy is fascinating. Most people don't read it because it's a lot of just rules and regulations, a little bit of stories, a lot of the rules. So it was fascinating to be like, that's a lot of rules that also shape our society today. Hence why we should read it. Hence why we should read constitutions and our laws. Anyways, um, but Deuteronomy 30 changed my life. Changed my life. And I've talked about it before. Um, because it does sum up for that. It's when Moses, it's pretty much Moses's last speech to people. And Moses ends it with choose life. This is, I mean, they were all worshiping the sacred cow. A lot was going on. I mean, there was a lot of stuff happening. As I said at the beginning, we don't live nearly in the times of anything biblical or before. So it's fascinating to me that we're actually worried about stuff. Um, as to our physical selves. Like we don't live in anything like that. Um, so is Moses's last speech. And to sum it up very much at the end, he very point blank says, choose life. Today is set before thee life and good, and death and evil. Therefore, choose life and good. And it's an everyday choice, is then what she kind of goes through into the, hey, the 12-step community really understands this because all they have is that day of getting through or that 10 minutes or what have you. When I read that Deuteronomy, and so I'm happy Cayce knows, he knew, he gets it, he gets it. And so I do maybe suggest to all those who listen, um, at any time in meditative form or just in your stillness, in your breath of life, your sacred breath of life, think about what those words mean. Choose life. Choose life. Because, in my humble opinion, many of us are not living life. We're living fears. And that's why it says you have either life and good or death and evil. Because those fears that we are pretty much living, it's really evil in the opposite of the choosing the life and good, as in why I was trying to stress, even in the spiritual communities. For some reason, this place is disappointing, and life is disappointing. And yet we think that that disappointment is going to propel us to greatness. It's very, I mean, logically, it doesn't make any sense. Logic and reason, folks. Logic and reason. Of course, there is fear that is uh, based on feelings, right? But just logic and reason. Choose life. So sit and maybe meditate on that as to what that is for you, what that looks like, what that feels like. To choose life every day, it changed it changed everything for me. And I've said it before on different shows. It changed the entire scope of my being when I began to meditate on just that. Those two words, choose life. Choose life. I cannot tell you how life then opened up. I cannot express to you what it was to actually take that in. Instead of sitting around and waiting and worrying about the inevitable of death, that is clearly not choosing life. So I'm going to read this again for a moment, because we're going to start going into things and I'll hold the card up. This is number 16, conception. The frequency of conception invites us to bring our consciousness to our origin. You beautiful star. The place where everything in creation begins. It helps us to remember the infinite potential and possibilities of this space and what we can manifest through our own focused awareness and intention. Take that definition as I hold the card up again. It might be a little bit blurry. I'll do a um, short so it'll be more cleared picture for everyone when I'm done here. Um, Take that definition and now attach choose life. The infinite potential and possibilities of this space, this lovely, most wonderful Earth School, this lovely, most wonderful environment, as the reading just talked about, your physical mind is like a flower that blooms or withers away in its own environment. This space, the infinite potential and possibilities of this space, and what we can manifest through our own focused awareness and intention. We're going to keep going, but we're going to go into the Edgar Cayce companion book. I hope everyone is doing well in the chat. Good to see you, Robert V. Good to see you, sir. A little precursor. Lucky and I's show for Friday night. It'll air at 8 p.m. Um, Lucky agreed for us to talk about anarchy. The true anarchy, and not all the crazy stuff that has sprung out of an ideology that has nothing to do with communism or socialism or Antifa, but the true, beautiful, hopeful, magical ideology, philosophy of anarchy. Lucky being such a great counterpart to Stars of the Morning Light is allowing me to go into it. So that will be Friday night, folks. It'll be a great show. All right. So we are now in the Edgar Cayce companion book. Great book. And this is a section about fear and worry. Fascinating. Worrying our lives away. Oh, that sucks. Choose life. And this, so you all know, with companion books or any, like let's say you're reading on a topic, it's kind of like back in high school when you would have to write a paper with criticism, or you have to look up, uh, you have to go deeper into your studies, which means that you might have to, it's a reference material, right? We're talking about reference materials. So this reference material is like most in sections. So you would get just little snippets that you would read because it's a reference material. It's not a narrative or book or what have you. So I don't even know if the world with the young have to use reference materials anymore because it is all so much Google. Um, it is good to have reference materials when you study more so outside of a scope of just the book that you're in. So we're clearly in Secrets of the Universe, and hopefully, I think we're going to move out of it. So to talk more about this as to what Edgar actually would say about fear and worry and what have you, you go to the reference material, which is the Edgar Cayce Companion, to get a bigger scope as to his words and not the author's words. Okay? That's for maybe younger viewers to know where I'm going with this. Because as an English teacher, whenever I had to bring up the concept of reference material, I seem to have been the first one to always do that. So I have no idea what the world does now. So one of the little snippets we're going to read. Self-awareness Selfishness is that makes men afraid. The awareness of the necessities of the carnal forces in the material world seeking their gratification. Peace is with thee. Contentment is in thy hand. Who becomes not afraid, but trusts rather in him, and him meaning God, right? I'm going to read that again because it was alluded to in the story, in the book, when it was selfishness creates sin. Selfishness does this and that. So, selfishness is also what creates the thought form of fear. Selfishness. It is the awareness of self, and you can call it the ego, you can call it whatever you want. I don't care of the term. The awareness of self and the self-preservation in the carnal forces that are innately within us humans creates this fear because we know, yeah, we will die. I'm going to read it again, and I'll read it slower. Actually, I'm going to read the line above it or below it in this. Self-awareness, self-consciousness brings fear and doubt. So now I'm going to read it again. Self-awareness, selfishness is that makes men afraid. And that means human. The awareness of the necessities of the carnal forces in the material world seeking their gratification. Peace is with thee. Contentment is in thy hand, who becomes not afraid, but trusts. I'm going to keep reading some more. Fear is the root of most of the ills of mankind, whether of self or of what others think of self, or how self will appear to others. To overcome fear is to fill the mental, spiritual being with that which wholly casts out fear, the love manifest in the world through God. Perfect love cast out fear. Where fear enters, there sin lieth at the door. For he or she that is without fear is free indeed, which is true. That is spoken in all sorts of texts. Those without fear are free indeed. And so I love the jargon that happens, and as we were talking at the beginning of this video about the how fear is so insidious into our common language that most people don't think that they're discussing fear or emphasizing fear or um, spreading more fear because they are talking about freedom. Those who are truly free have no fear. I'm gonna use my husband, in reference here, right? Um, and he doesn't mind that I do this. He says, "Do whatever you gotta do, Court." Last night he was as many of the um population here at Stars of the Morning Light. You guys know that there's a lot going on at my husband's job. Last night he spoke even about greater issues. They are pretty much down to two able-bodied men, and one of those is my husband. Another one is young and has only been there for a few months, so he doesn't know much. They are down, and this is $1 million business warehouse work, who are down to two able-bodied men, and one of them is my husband. Um, so last night, as we were discussing, We kind of had our anniversary dinner last night because I just kind of intuitively knew make your husband all of his favorite meals, or what he enjoys to eat tonight because your anniversary might be interrupted, which I find out that there's an unexpected meeting today, which will interrupt anything today, right? So good that we got together last night. Um, Throughout all this, though, as he's releasing all sorts of information to me, currently, this environment, right? I'm using this to bring home a relatable construct to whatever to all these things that we're talking about. The environment that he is in, I will say, is pretty much broken him. He thinks he's not broken yet. I can guarantee you a lot of what was coming out of him last night. It's like, oh, yeah, you're kind of shattering here, honey. It's the environment that either makes you grow and thrive and flourish or wither away or snap, right? Um, and within that though, because I don't mind, within that though, somewhere within all the crazy that's been going on and all the pain and a lot of heartache and loss and a lot of confusion, within that breakdown, he doesn't fear anymore. He sincerely asked me again last night and Courtney if, I don't know, they shut the doors because there's nobody there to work, or if they do the. And he just started running all these different scenarios. I just kept saying, I don't care. I don't care. Because I don't. I don't. You know, you care more about the well being of the one you love rather than any kind of financial situation. That's ridiculous. It comes and goes. It comes and goes. It's all energy. Um, but he sincerely could feel last night, I don't care. And the only reason he took it in as truth that I was saying, because I've been saying it for months and years, I don't care. Like I'll roll with whatever happens, is because he had finally released the fear of whatever may happen. He had finally come to that point of, I cannot mentally, physically, emotionally handle this anymore. So I'm going to release whatever does happen, whatever is going on, I'm just going to release all fear. He wasn't aware of the fact that he did that, but usually it takes humans a breaking point of some kind to fully release. And in that release of letting go of the fear is that breath and freshness of the freedom. The freedom. So at dinner last night, as I kept saying, I don't care. I don't, whatever, man. We're together and we've been through a whole lot worse than whatever may or may not happen. It's not my focus, right? I'm not going to worry about it. Um, and him releasing any constructs of fear based around it. Um, you could feel the sense of freedom within him. And in that freedom is the peace. It's the peace of mind. I will tell you, my master Shri, who has passed recently, sent me a beautiful message a week or so ago, and I am going to actually probably attach it to this video. So I'm going to quote Master Shri Ranka. Um, a master is always at peace. A master is always at peace. And peace and fear cannot live in the same being. So, in humans, it usually does take something in their environment that causes them to release the fear. Because most humans have unconscious awareness of fear because they have such a deep awareness of themselves. It's fascinating, especially when you choose life. Because I'm going to tell you, none of them jobs, none of that stuff, that's not life. It's great if you are in a position to help others and to have sustainability and whatnot. That is um, that's a byproduct to life. Same as how Manly P. Hall will tell you that happiness is a byproduct of your actions, right? We all live in just byproducts of one another, byproducts of our own doings. It is fear of the unknown that first makes fear. It is fear of the unknown that first makes fear. Hmm. It is fear of the unknown that first makes fear. And when there is the unknown, we should be replacing it with trust, but we allow fear to attach itself to the unknown. I've talked all about this, especially in the summertime. Do you remember? You guys might not remember, but I'll put it out there. When we would talk about doubt, all doubt is the unknown. That's it. But we attach this feeling of fear to it. And this line right here says, it is the fear of the unknown that first makes the fear. So, what's fascinating is fear is mostly feelings that attach themselves to this thing called doubt. I talked about this all last summer. Doubt in its root, in its essence, is just the unknown. But instead of attaching trust, us humans, we attach fear to it. I also don't understand why. That work through that, choose life. Fear is as a fruit of indecisions, respecting that which is lived and that which is held as ideal. Doubt is the father of fear. Fear is as the beginning of faltering. Faltering is that which makes for dis-ease throughout the soul and mental body. In nature and in the animal instincts, we find only the expressions of the universal consciousness of hope and never of fear safe, created by man in his indulging in the gratification of material appetites. So, meaning, in actual, man is different than animal, even though a lot of our fear stems from all these interesting carnal, kind of animalistic worries of the unknown, the doubt, because we know our bodies of form will die. Animals who live in the present moment all the time, right? They're always in the present. It's great. They don't necessarily, they have instincts of survival, but they don't sit around and worry about it because they're in the moment. Worry in its last analysis is that of fear. I do, though, want to move to a different section. How are we all doing? I'm actually going to talk about patience for a moment. I was kind of drawn to this section in the companion because, as I was just saying, doubt, the definition of doubt is just unknown. It's the unknown. But then we put the feelings of fear and we attach it to doubt to then broaden it to make it more intense, right? To create the worry, which is really fear. Instead of, like I said, just adding, if it's unknown, then just add trust. But as poor unfortunate humans, we don't learn trust from a young age. We learn fear from a young age. And it is that self-awareness, right? Actually, before we go there, I'm going to go back to where we were, unless I lost it already. That selfishness aspect, um, I might have already lost it. Oh no. I'm going to read it one more time, and then I actually want to go into patience for a moment. Um, I'm going to go into patience for a moment. I'm going to read the self part of fear one more time. Self awareness, self consciousness brings fear and doubt. Self awareness, selfishness is that makes men afraid. The awareness of the necessities of the carnal forces in the material world seeking their gratification. Peace is with thee, contentment is thy in thy hand, who becomes not afraid, but trusts in God. And I do want to say again, it said when we were talking about the in nature and in animals' instincts, we find only the expressions of universal consciousness of hope. We never of fear save, created by man in his indulging in the gratification of material appetite. And so remember, fear is the root of most of the ills of mankind, whether of self or of what others think of self, or how self will appear to others. To overcome fear is to fill the mental, spiritual being with that which wholly casts out fear, the love, right? So it's fascinating that it all starts with self. It all starts with self, the self awareness. And then it gives even the list of how this fear is represented. Not just death, but we're also afraid of how others might view us, how they see the self. We also want to gratify that self. We also want to gratify it in the carnal forces, which we all know what those are. And we also want to gratify it in the material forces. And if we don't get that gratification for some reason, we have fear. It's fascinating. Fascinating. Choose life. I want to talk a bit about patience for a moment. Patience, the most beautiful of all virtues and the least understood. Remember, it is one of the phases or dimensions through which thy soul may catch the greatest and more powerful glimpse of the Creator. Hmm. As the teacher of old has given, impatience possesses thy possesses your souls. Okay. Patience, long suffering, and endurance cease to be a virtue when the entity allows self merely to be imposed upon and to take second place merely because someone else of a more aggressive nature imposes. We're going to go into this and how it all ties together. Long suffering does not mean suffering of self and not grappling with it. Rather, through though you be persecuted, unkindly spoken of, taken advantage of by others, you do not attempt to fight back or do not spiteful things, that you be patient first with self, then with others. Not a tolerance that becomes timid. This would make rebellion in self. Not a patience that is not positive. Not humbleness that becomes morbid or lacking in beauty. For as orderliness, sorry, as for as orderliness is a part of thy being, so let consistency be a part of thy being. So, consistent in patience with thyself. Just bear with me for a moment. We're going to go back to the secrets of the universe. Secrets of the universe and how to use them is where we are today. And I'm going to read it again. Hmm. I am going to read it again once I. We are perhaps uniquely among the earth's creatures. The worrying animal. That is us, folks. These bodies are built very much like all those other four-leggeds and whatnot. We operate very much like just animals here. But we are the type that can also worry because we have that self-awareness that they don't have. We are perhaps uniquely among the earth's creatures, the worrying animal. We worry away our lives, fearing the future, disconnect with the present, unable to take in the idea of dying, unable to sit still. Patience, the most beautiful of all virtues and the least understood. Patience, long suffering, and endurance cease to be a virtue when the entity allows self merely to be imposed upon, and to take second place merely because someone else of a more aggressive nature imposes. Hmm. So to be still and to have patience with ourselves, because I'm going to go and read that again, is to allow the entity, us, that's where that is coming from. It's referencing us earth animals that are capable of worrying. The entity to do the opposite. Let's listen. Merely to be imposed upon, influence, environment. And to take second place merely because someone else of a more aggressive nature imposes. We just went through that, as in fear is also a part of how others view us because they might have more of an aggressive nature, an aggressive energy. So we have all this environmental imposing upon us. We have all these fears surrounding about other different aggressive natures, entities that can look upon us. Long suffering. So remember, patience is long suffering and endurance. Long suffering does not mean suffering of self and not grappling about it. It is to go through persecution of self and from others. It is to um, take in the unkindly spoken. It is to take advantage. It is to be taken advantage of others. It is you do not attempt to fight back. It is all these things that patience. Just bear with me. It is all these things, long suffering and endurance, that we seem to have done. We have seen to have done. But the difference is, you all can tell me. I mean, you all know we have been concerned with the state of affairs of ourselves and others. We've been scared and fearful of them backstabbing us or talking about us. We've been scared of all situations pertaining people, places, and things because it is a part of the unknown and is attached to our self awareness and how we apply this. And then we sit back and we take it all in that long suffering and endurance. Just bear with me. You all know this. I'm looking for you do not attempt to fight back or to do spiteful things. That you be patient first with self, then with others. So, just bear with me. Here on this channel, we talk about a lot of compassion because compassion could remove the long suffering from the term patience. We can have compassion for ourselves and others, opposed to patience of long suffering and endurance. We can have compassion and endurance for self and others. The reason I'm talking about patience, though, is that you all have experienced patience for a very, very long time, in whatever way, shape, or form. At some point, you did not argue back. At some point, you did not fight back. At some point, you took it in stride, right? You took it in stride. What if I propose that we move patience into compassion for self and others? And instead of taking things in stride, we can take things in trust, and we can also take things. Sorry for the pause there. My dog has really gone into sleepland, so you might hear some noise. I apologize for he might get loud with his snores and his chasing things in his sleep. Um, I say remove the long suffering, put in compassion and endurance. Then, instead of fear, replace it with trust. And many of you might be thinking, well, geez, by being patient, doesn't that mean that I'm trusting? Not necessarily. Not necessarily, because within you is their worry. That's the long suffering part. The long suffering of worrying about things that may or may not happen. The long suffering and enduring through the long suffering instead of having compassion for self and others and trust instead of worry, and to realize that the majority of it comes from doubt, which is the unknown, and or the self gratification of carnal forces, material forces, and the ultimate. You will leave one day. So choose life, whatever that may look for you, like to you, right? Our card, our card of conception, which is life, conception, right? Which is life. That's where it starts, anywhere and everywhere. As we first started talking about fear, and it was represented as a monstrous thought form, a conception that can overtake a being and then just becomes so common in our language and environment that we don't even notice anymore. We just allow it to be fed and sustain itself and direct our life. Conception. The frequency of conception invites us to bring our consciousness to its origin, the light within. Our consciousness to that God spark, that flame, that light within, that pure trust because you are the ultimate, because you are creation, because you are life. It is your inherent birthright to live without fear and to live in joy, peace, harmony, creation. The frequency of conception invites us to bring our consciousness to our origin, the place where everything in creation begins. It helps us to remember the infinite potential and possibilities of this space, and that we can manifest through our own focused awareness and intentions. So, not only do I invite you to sit and meditate about choose life, I also want to bring you to the idea of conception, as in, if it is our self awareness, our selfishness that brings forth fear, well, then, what can we manifest through our own focused awareness and intention? If your awareness of self and selfishness can create something as powerful as fear, then what could we focus our awareness and intentions on to remove fear, to create something else that directs our life, that can coexist and be a part of society and humanity that is beneficial, opposed to fear that is destructive? I don't know. What could you focus your awareness and intentions on instead of the self? I don't know. I don't know. That's your decision. That's your idea. I say choose life, and it usually will present itself. Cuz unfortunately, folks, as I leave you, do know you are going to die. And will you most likely come back? Yes, because you most likely have chosen to come back over and over and over and over again. So what makes you think that when you leave this plane, you're going to make a different decision when you've done it so many times? So I suggest, instead of concentrating on how do I get out of this place is brutal and horrible and non-beneficial and destructive, and instead of trying to figure out how to get out, as we all know, the only way out is through. And the only way through this is to start recognizing that you are creation and that you can help. You can do things here with a change of your mindset, not on fear, but on trust to create the world that you would like to choose and be in gratitude and love and appreciation of. That's what I say. So, I love you all so very much. Thank you for joining me. Hit the thumbs up, send it out to folks. Be with Lucky and I 8 o'clock at Eastern Standard Time for Esoteric Tea. We are going to be talking about anarchy. And so thank you everyone in the chats, and definitely stay tuned. I'll be around. Bye guys.